Hi, I'm Chris from Airwindows, and hey, look at this. It's called Slew4. You can see it right there. And you can do this. Exciting, huh? You hearing it yet? No? Okay, well then, let's try it on a drum kit. You can do this. You hearing it yet? You're not hearing it, are you? How about now? Noise. Now are you hearing it? This is Airwindows Slew4. This is essentially the tape compression that's in tape pack 2 and is going to be in 2 tape 9. But this is it all by itself. And the reason I played that earlier stuff there, I've also got Discord Welcome Home. This you kind of sort of can hear.
They sang Discord Welcome Home. We're all so glad you're here. Discord Welcome.
So that's all very well and good. It doesn't sound like it's doing anything. But listen to the S's when I crank it up as far as it'll go and leave it there.
They sang Discord Welcome Home. We're all so glad you're here. Discord Welcome Home. We've longed for this for years.
Doesn't sound very different, does it? But that is taking some of the highs out of those S's, even though they're not mixed at full crank. Again, back over to this. This is full noise at full volume. And that's as hard as you can push it. 96K noise, too. And that's basically the story there. I can bounce back over to old Alien Kittens. We'll turn it off, and then I'll crank it up as far as it'll go, and you might or might not hear any difference. And then back off again. Essentially what this is doing is it's the aliasing suppression. And you know, that's probably about enough of that. Because the only way you can really obviously hear this in a way where it jumps right out and it's like, oh yeah, I totally hear what that's doing, is when I hit it with full volume white noise. At which point it suppresses the extreme highs so hard that it's a really big obvious difference. But blessed few of the mixes I throw into it will even get you that far. And that's because this is a follow-up to other Slew plugins that I've made, which have all been really good at being able to address problem high frequencies in mixes anywhere they pop up and become annoying. Excuse me. And that's been the case for a bunch of the Slew plugins. Slew, Slew2, Slew3, so on and so forth. Those have always been go-tos for situations where people are working on something in mix, and like, I don't know, maybe your guitar or whatever, not electric either because those have speakers, more likely if your acoustic guitar got mic'd with a particular kind of mic where it's just scrape, scrape, scrape. This will do a real good job of mellowing that out. It's doing a real good job of mellowing the drum track out, even though you can barely tell, because all it's doing is taking the top end of the cymbals off without really obviously changing anything. And those drums are recorded with like room mics, mics in front of the kit, And the mics I was using were my Roswell Mini K47s. Those were picked out. I picked them out specifically because they are condenser mics that don't have nasty, tizzy, aggressive high frequencies. I chose them because they didn't do annoying highs. So when you crank Slew4 out on them, nothing much happens because they already didn't have annoying highs, so it doesn't have anything to do. But in situations where you do have annoying super highs, this is going to be a real rescue plugin. Probably the best of all the Slew plugins at being able to fix that particular problem. And again, the reason this is coming out is because, well, for among other things, 2Tape 9 isn't out yet. And there is I've got an update to my clip-only plugin, I believe clip-only 3. I've been working on that based on things people have discovered quite recently. 2Tape 9 is stuff that people in the hardware domain were discovering last year, combined with the stuff that's being done lately, because one of the things that 2Tape 9 has is, rather than clip-only 2 being the final clip suppressor stage, I've got clip-only 3 in there. And I've been putting all these things together. It's going to be very exciting seeing that stuff start to come out. That's kind of a big deal. And it's all based on things like this. And the funny thing about Slew4, it is not answering to any of those things. That is my own weird exploration, which is so often the case. Usually I'm taking stuff in some interesting direction. Like the deal with the clip-only 3 is there's a guy who's out there having some success with this new plugin who decided to make clipping turn into noise rather than clipping turn into just a sharp edge as you hit the very top, and got real excited about that. Thought that it dithered aliasing. I did some experimenting. It doesn't really dither aliasing, but it does an interesting thing in its own right. You can use it as a special effect, and in fact, his plugin is real good at doing that. And mine doesn't do what his does, nor is it meant to. But after all, clip-only 3, there are no controls. It's just a safety clipper. But it turns out you can introduce noise into the clipping behavior in such a way that as it just barely touches that clip point, which is going to be entirely aliasing at that stage, when you do a really hard clip, it's going to bring in a harmonic overtone that's not really correlated with things in a useful way. And you can have it bring in noise very quietly at that point, and then have the amplitude of the noise ramp up a little bit as it gets louder and then go away again as you saturate into full-on just square wave kind of flat topping. And that's new. I didn't have that before playing with bringing noise into the way stuff clips and stuff. So, and my source is open, so if he likes that, he can just take it out of my plugin and cite Airwindows, of course. But yeah, if I have enabled you out there to do a further thing with your own, however it is you're arriving at it, people are doing Vibe-coded plugins all the time these days, and people are doing Vibe-coded plugins based on open source repos and stuff these days. And that's kind of sort of what open source is for, but you need to listen for it and do something intentional rather than just, oh, I'm just going to take this, thanks, bye, now I have one. And Slew4 can be part of all of that kind of thing, because Slew4 is a really good way of doing a kind of, it's kind of like aliasing suppression, but really what it is just layering another form of high-frequency filtering. And the form, that doesn't exist before I did this, to the best of my knowledge. And I'll tell you why. Because I did it wrong on purpose. And when I say that, what I mean is, I'm doing a series of averaging filters, when you do averaging filters, especially if they're just a rectangular window averaging, it causes this crazy behavior in what you call the stop band. Like you can have just 2 samples being averaged, and that's all well and good. That'll do a pretty smooth cutoff, and then it'll cancel out pretty well at the Nyquist frequency, but there's not enough of that to really suppress aliasing, besides which if you were suppressing aliasing or doing an oversampling thing, which I might start experimenting with, then what you're doing is upsampling, and then you're applying a 20K filter and then downsampling again. You have to put the filter in not at the point of Nyquist, but some ways in. Turns out, if you just start adding averaging filters, it doesn't add up in a helpful way. You can do like 2 samples and then 3 samples and then 4 samples, and each of those wind up putting these steep notches into the cancellation of the stop band. It starts rolling off. Yes, it rolls off a little bit slowly too. It's not a really sharp point. And then you get these crazy lumps in the passband because you're not supposed to actually be doing rectangular averaging of all of the... So that's why nobody does this. But if you just stack up a bunch of these filters, like one after the other, and you do 2 samples, and then you skip 3 and do 4 samples, and then you skip 5 and do 6 samples, the notches in each successive one start to hit the peaks in all the previous ones, which is a weird thing to happen. But what it does is it means you get this steeper and steeper roll-off at a lower and lower frequency, and then you do have funny lumps in the stop band, which is why people would normally not do that, because it would be considered, well, that's not correct. Look, it's obviously wrong. But you have this massive drop, and then you have these little lumps in the stop band, which continues to go downwards until it's like 200 dB down by the time you hit Nyquist. And the lumps are like 90 dB below the cutoff. It starts acting more like a brick wall filter, except for it's obviously not. And since it's an averaging filter, the time domain performance is like perfect in certain kinds of ways. It does this roll off incredibly well, but there's no pre-echo at all. There's no pre-ring, in other words. The way that the filter goes, you don't have this advanced wiggling thing going up to the filter and then afterwards, which is something that brick wall filters normally do. And this is why you would be using like a certain amount of latency to do a filter that steep in hopes of doing stuff with like oversampling or whatever. You're going to be running some kind of filter that's involving this pre-ring going on in order to do a linear phase filter. Well, this is not even slightly linear phase, but it still ends up being really steep, and it still ends up canceling out everything on the stop band incredibly well. And, well, that's what I just showed you. That's what I just showed you in Slew4. The label says compress because it's looking for only stuff that would cause aliasing and not just a global filter. And that's why it doesn't sound like it's doing anything on all of the audio stuff that I put it on. But you throw some white noise at it, and it forces it to kick in. And then that's what you heard. That's the sound of that filtering. It kicks in a whole series of levels and does a really good job of being a useful sounding filter that didn't exist before I put these averages together the way that I did. So there you go. Slew4 should do a very good job of taming obnoxious highs anywhere that you've got something that you've recorded or synthesized that has obnoxious highs that you want not to be there. It is a useful part of my Tapehack 2 plugin, which is already out. If you think that sounded good, well, maybe this is why. It's got that under the hood. This is the raw version. It's essentially tape high frequency compression without the tape or without the distortion. Just only the high frequency compression behavior, looking for those things that are going to cause problems and taking only those away. And that's also why it acts a little bit like a de-esser. Mind you, it's not as powerful as like DBAS, and it suffers the same problem, I think, in that if you're trying to use it as a de-esser and you just run like your SM57 or something into there, it's very possible that it simply will not find enough high frequencies to do anything. It's looking for the stuff like off of a little lavalier mic where it's excruciatingly obnoxious, and it'll handle that stuff just fine. So I hope you find it useful. I will get back to work doing other things. One of the things I got to do is make my record videos, because I'm going to throw another Boston record at the $10 and up patrons, because I got to do something special, seeing as I won't paywall any of my plugins or any of my useful work. So I'm going to play Hitch a Ride for everybody and let you see how that works on the record. And then in the middle of this week, we get another forbidden record. Red House off of Smash Hits. You don't get to hear much of this, but I'm playing you it off of a Steamboat Warner 7 reprise label pressing of this old record. This is an old record where it boasts that a giant poster is enclosed. And by God, there is. It's a giant poster. So I got to do a video where I will talk for everybody, because forbidden is for everybody, about how Jimi Hendrix got the sounds that he did and what's useful to know about that stuff. Seeing as this is like an enormous inspiration, for instance, for Stevie Ray Vaughan, who is also noted for incredible Strat tones. I've been working on my Strat a little bit. I'll save that for the Forbidden video. But yeah, I hope you enjoy Slew4, and I'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.